A portion of this video is sponsored by Incipio. So this is the iPhone 13 Pro. You probably know that. It's the latest in the line of Apple's top-end phones that pack the best features. But maybe you shouldn't buy it. Instead, I think it's time to think smaller and give the Mini a try. So the market of phones today has changed a ton from a few years ago. It used to be that having a huge screen in your pocket was a novelty, but now it's a norm. And even the mini phones now are giant from what was considered mini a few years ago. Finding a small phone that performs well these days is just not easy anymore. The trends have changed. But Apple, surprisingly of all the companies, is still trying to make fetch happen with the iPhone 13 mini. So the 13 series has gone back to, I think, what Apple does best, for better or worse. Take a phone they made last year and perfect it and fix all the little issues with it. And a 13 mini, I think, is the best phone that does this. And now it seems like those issues that used to exist with the 12 mini especially are gone, and the small iPhone is kind of better than ever. So is it finally time to get tiny with the iPhone 13 mini? So the question, like, why get the mini instead of the regular 13 or 13 Pro or even the Big Daddy Max? There are a few reasons I think that you should probably consider it. So the most obvious reason is the form factor, right? It's called the mini, it's small. I have gone to huge phones. I like getting the biggest screen I can, but huge phones are clearly not for everything and clearly not for everyone. Something to be said for having a device that doesn't have to take up every square centimeter of space in your pocket or your purse or wherever you're putting it, one that you can just easily hold with one hand and type on. Or even just a phone that you don't use quite as often. There are a ton of reasons why this size of phone is better than a bigger version, even if personally I don't prefer it. I'm not everybody, I'm aware of that. There are different tastes and different flavors, and the mini is like delicious vanilla. Well, maybe I personally prefer delicious chocolate. And then the big one though, there's the price. That might be why this phone is for everybody. It's the most affordable flagship iPhone you can buy. And obviously you can get last year's 12, 11, or even an SE for less. But if you want a brand new model, the mini is still a pretty solid value. So you're getting the same features as the bigger 13, but for a starting price of $699, that now comes with the 128 gigabytes standard, which was long overdue. So that price leaves wiggle room, I think, for other things, especially if you're going to spend the money for a larger phone. So just because you're gonna get the mini, and this is a weird thing to say, that doesn't mean you can't have a big screen. For just a little bit more than the price of an iPhone 13 Pro Max, you can get a 13 mini and a brand new redesigned iPad mini. So you are getting an iPhone and an iPad. You get your big screen when you need it, and also a phone that's very easy to carry around for like about 1,300 bucks. So another reason is that it seems Apple isn't going to be making this phone any longer. So pour one out for the mini. At least according to rumors and alleged sales numbers, the mini didn't sell that well last year. So apparently next year at the iPhone 14, there will not be a mini model. So if you're all interested in this phone, right now is the time to get it and then keep it for a few years. Who knows when Apple's going to try the mini phone again, so probably a collector's item by the time we're out like iPhone 17. So at first glance, the 13 mini looks like it could have the number 12 written next to it. When you hold these phones next to each other, the visual changes are, let's say, minor at best. The biggest feature change with the 13 and 13 mini is the camera system. Now they're diagonal. That's how you can tell a difference. While it hasn't received as much attention as the Big Pro brothers, the updates here make this one, I think, one of the best cameras on any phone, and especially a small phone. So visually, obviously, like I said, diagonal layout. You might think that's because Apple wants to force you to buy a new case, and that very well may be the case, but also the main reason for that change is actually in the camera sensor. So no matter what iPhone 13 you get, whether you decide to rock the mini or go all the way up to the Pro Max, you're gonna want a case to protect your device, because in the battle between glass, no matter how strong it is, and concrete concrete's going to win. So I do want to take a minute to shout out this video's sponsor, Incipio, and especially highlight their Optum case, which provides a bunch of new stuff that I haven't seen before in a case. They designed it first for like optimal performance, meaning if you are using 5G, it's gonna be really good at heat dissipation, which is super important, especially when you're on millimeter wave. It's got air vents to promote airflow through the case to cool down the device. Antimicrobial defense, you're getting a lifetime warranty. It's gonna work with wireless chargers and MagSafe charging and MagSafe accessories, so you don't have to worry about any of that. They also have another option, it's called the Organicore Clear, 14-foot drop tested, made from plants. It's the world's first 100% compostable, clear, co-molded case. It looks awesome, and you get all the good stuff that I just mentioned, lifetime warranty, wireless charging, and MagSafe charging compatible. So if you want to check them out, obviously just go to your Verizon store, otherwise we'll link to them down below. So it now features a larger sensor and sensor shift tech, which is a mouthful to say. It took me like 4 takes to get that. Is essentially the same sensor setup that we got with last year's 12 Pro Max. So now you get the top end camera in the smallest iPhone Apple makes. That is a big deal, or at least it's a big deal on paper. Blind camera test time. I love doing this. Here are the phones that were used. Can you guess which one was a 13 mini? And especially pay attention to noise that you've got, color reproduction, how things get bright, how the phones are dynamically brightening backgrounds. Look at all of those things that make the photo kind of come together. So, what did you think? And first of all, just to tell you, A was the 13 mini. So if you say you don't notice much of a difference, I can't really say I blame you. Besides the actual quality of the photos, Apple really tried to throw in more features so if you get the result that you want. So things like photographic styles are just that. As someone who tests a ton of phones, one thing I noticed is how different the processing is between like all of them. So the Samsung phones have punchier, kind of brighter colors. Pixel is kind of contrasty and cool, and the iPhone's kind of flat. But this new feature, which is not filters, you can actually mimic the type of photo that you want to take. It's a nice touch. I don't know how often I'm actually going to use it in real life, but it's more control than Apple's ever given you before over their photos, so I'm all for it. Do keep in mind though that this is baked into the file, so you can't make changes like you can with a raw photo and go back and edit it later. It's actually changing how the photo itself is taken, not just kind of filtering over it. So one of the most impressive things about the iPhone 13 mini is the video system. I mean, Apple's been just crushing it with the video recording, but the fact that you get this quality in this small a phone is, in my mind, hands down the best thing about it, especially if you are shooting a lot of video. So that brings us to the feature that Apple really wants you to focus on. Sorry about that. Cinematic mode. So if you've seen any of the marketing around these phones, you probably already know what it is, but essentially think of it like portrait mode for video with automated focusing on different subjects with some AI thrown in there. I'll say this, and I covered it a lot more in the 13 Pro video. We'll link that down below, wherever if you want to check it out. This is clearly a first generation feature. It's capped at 1080p, 30 FPS. It does have some issues, but at the same time, it's doing a better job than many of the other phones out there that have tried it. It's still a few years away, but if you have ideal lighting and a clearly defined subject, like portrait mode, it'll do an okay job. You'll still get the fuzzy edges around people. It cuts off in certain areas. You can tell it's trying too hard to get the focus, but I would assume it will learn and get better. It's just not there right now. So the camera is a giant improvement, but the bigger reason to consider the 13 mini over the 12 mini is battery. And I'm gonna say it, battery life on the 12 mini sucked. There's no other way around it. You could get through the day, but you are constantly reminded this is a small phone with a small battery. This year, Apple claims the mini can get 1.5 hours more battery life thanks to processing improvements and a physically larger battery. 1.5 hours is a giant deal. Now, is that exactly what you're going to get? I don't know, probably not. But like with everything, battery life greatly depends on what apps you're using and things you're doing on your phone. At the very least though, battery life does seem to be improved, and we'll test that more as we use the phones. But if you're constantly paying attention to the battery status, at least now you can start paying attention to it towards the later part of the day. And that bigger battery can let you enjoy other parts of the phone like more. The screen now gets brighter, up to 800 nits, which is a pretty big deal. And there's more of it because the notch is smaller, although you don't get any extra features because of that smaller notch, which is surprising. Apple didn't do anything. I would have loved to have seen a battery percentage finally come back or customize what you can put up there. I do also wish you got ProMotion on these screens. We finally got the high refresh rate with the Pro, but considering a lot of other phones out there, especially at this price point, have high refresh rates, even 90 hertz, would have been really nice to have. Eventually, they will come to all of the phones, but a bummer they're not there right now. But at the very least, if that's a deal breaker for you, you can get it on the Pro line. The A15 Bionic is, it's fast. But if anybody tells you that it feels faster than the A14, I think they're lying. There's just a very quick processor. Typically, that'd be thought of as, honestly, processor is crazy fast. It's almost a moot point to talk about it. But like I said at the top of this video, this phone is an iteration on what came before it. But with the Mini in particular, the changes that came and the features that address concerns of the previous model add up to a pretty big deal. I think now the Mini is finally a phone that you can buy without compromising. You're not gonna have to worry as much about battery life. You don't have to worry about not getting the best cameras out there. You're kind of getting the best that Apple has to offer, but now you're just getting it in a smaller package. And the beauty of Android, to me, has always been choice. You could pick the form factor you wanted. You could pick the features you wanted. And while Apple is not offering the same feature set and choice you get in the wide variety of Android world, you are now getting size choice without making the compromise of features. And that's awesome. So if you're in the market for a small phone that's gonna pack a pretty big punch, I think the 13 Mini is an awesome way to go.